Why is the Western Wall so holy? What makes the Western Wall that we see over there so important that there are people there not only praying today, but there are even people kissing the Western Wall? And some people are even so close that they could touch every part of the Temple Mount if they could. During the time that the temple stood, and we believe it stood there on top of Mount Moriah, where was the entrance to the Temple Mount? From our sources, we know that the Kohanim, the priests, were the ones to use the Western Wall as their main entrance to the Temple Mount area. As a matter of fact, we have a piece of a bridge today, which we call the Robinson's Arch, named for the archaeologist who discovered it, that we believe is one of the bridges that the Kohanim used to go into the Temple Mount. But what about everyone else? Well, everyone else used the entrance at the southern wall, on the southern side of the Temple Mount. They would go in the Huldah gates, or the double gates as they were called, and then they would walk up and somehow be upstairs on the Temple Mount Plaza. Once they were all on the Temple Mount Plaza, then they could be near the temple compound itself, near the house of God, and they could watch the priest do the sacrifices. But interestingly, the entrance to the actual temple compound or temple building, it's a little hard to see, but there are some archways there in the east, as if you were coming down the slope of the Mount of Olives from the east side of the city, and you would be walking westward, across the Dome of the Rock, towards the Western Wall. So the Kohen, who would be doing the sacrifices, would need to come from the Western Wall access to get up to the Temple Mount, and then once up on the Temple Mount, he would enter the actual temple compound from the east, walking west. Now there's an interesting story, an interesting legend with this. The temple itself, we believe, stood approximately where the Dome of the Rock is standing today. And the innermost part of the temple was called the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh HaKodashim. The high priest, the Kohen Gadol, went into the Kodesh HaKodashim once a year, on Yom Kippur, on the Day of Atonement. And the legend tells us that the other priests would tie a rope around his waist so that they didn't know what was going to happen inside the temple, the inner workings of the temple, so that just in case something went wrong, they had a rope to pull the high priest out. But the point of the story is that all the priests would enter from the east, and then they would have the sacrificial altar outside in the middle of the temple area, and then the high priest would go even further westward to the Holy of Holies. And as far west as you could have gone back then, the Holy of Holies would therefore be as close as possible to the Western Wall. And therefore today, when we come to pray at this holy site, most people want to be at the Western Wall.